It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 in the morning. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out, when, by the glimmer of the half extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. Hey, y'all, and welcome to the next episode of Crazy Short Hairy Dude. I am your host, the Crazy Short Hairy Dude, and today we are talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So, we're going to be diving into the history of uh, Mary Shelley herself. Also, we're going to take a look at the story, characters involved, and discuss this amazing cautionary tale that tells the story of a man who, in an attempt to rid the world of death, ended up losing everything. So let's dive in. So Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was born August 30th, 1797, to author William Godwin and feminist Mary Wollstonecraft. Her life proved to be full of drama and tragedy from a very early start. Uh, when her mother died from complications of childbirth 11 days after Mary was born. When she was only 16, she eloped to France with the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was married at the time to a woman named Harriet. And afterwards, Mary's father, disowned her because of this. Percy's first wife, in the agony of feeling abandoned, drowned herself in the Serpentine River along with their unborn child. Within days of Harriet's death, Percy and Mary were married and they moved to the shores of Lake Geneva. It was there that they formed a literary circle that included uh, George Gordon, aka Lord Byron. And they would often hold all-night discussions talking about things like philosophy, literature, scientific, and supernatural topics. After one of these discussions, in which Byron suggested that they have a friendly ghost story competition, Mary had a nightmare. She woke up panicking because she had a nightmare of thunder and lightning and a man sewing together body parts in order to try to create life. And that became the inspiration for her novel Frankenstein, or also known as the modern Prometheus. She published it anonymously in 1818, and it was an instant success. Later on, she came forward and proved herself to be the author and took full credit. Mary and Percy almost had 5 children, but unfortunately, only one of them lived past the age of 3. Their son Percy Florence. Mary herself nearly died from the miscarriage of their 5th child, and a month later, Percy Shelley drowned in a boating accident in the Gulf of Spezia at the ripe old age of 29. Mary devoted the rest of her life to writing novels and editing Percy Shelley's poetry for posthumous publication, and traveling with her son. Mary died on February 1st, 1851, at the age of 53. Let's look at her impact. Mary Shelley practically invented the science fiction genre, while also contributing to the horror genre. Frankenstein itself is a cautionary tale of what happens when we try to play God. And as a result, this work has inspired numerous retellings in various ways, shapes, and forms. And just so we're clear, Frankenstein refers to the doctor, Victor Frankenstein, not the monster. The monster is never given a name in the book, just known as the creature. So, on screen, the first film adaptation was actually made by Thomas Edison, oddly enough. Oh, my lighting went dark there. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. All right. Um, so, yes, Thomas Edison made the first film in 1910, and unfortunately, a lot of the film was has been lost over the years and destroyed in just with time and neglect and things like that. Um, but the pieces that are left add up to roughly about 12 minutes, and someone was kind enough to find these and digitize them and put them on YouTube. So you can go on YouTube and find them. It's pretty interesting, actually. The most famous adaptation was probably 1931's Frankenstein by Universal Studios. Now, back in the day, Universal dominated the horror market. They dominated it for most of the 20th century. And that was thanks in large part to their decision to adapt classic literature into movies. They adapted films like uh, The Phantom of the Opera, and they adapted novels like Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and several others before moving on to Dracula, Frankenstein, all those. And so in 1931, they released adaptations of the two most popular horror stories of all time, Dracula and Frankenstein. Um, now, and originally they wanted Bela Lugosi to play the Frankenstein monster, but for whatever reason, he turned down the role. And so, while looking, they found Boris Karloff. Now, Boris Karloff himself was he was literally a starving artist at the time. He was out of work. He wasn't able to eat much because Great Depression was going on. So he was very gaunt and very skinny, and he played the role very well. He physically looked very corpse-like, and and yeah, even had some false teeth on one side, where when he took them out, his cheek kind of caved in a little bit, and of course with the makeup, it kind of exaggerated that, but it gave him more of that corpse-like look, and so that really helped his performance and really sell it as the reanimated corpse. The prosthetic makeup that he wore was the accomplishment of renowned makeup artist Jack Pierce. Now, Pierce was the man who came up with most of the iconic looks for Universal and their monsters back in the day. So he worked on Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Wolfman, and those are probably his most famous ones. But he worked on a lot of different movies, but those are the ones he's known for. Now, the film, while not exactly like the book, was a huge success and helped to launch Karloff's career. And it also helped launch the uh, probably the original connected film universe, which was the Universal Monsters. Eventually, Frankenstein's monster would go on to meet characters like Dracula and the Wolfman, and you know, and several others, um, and they all kind of lived in this shared story universe. Now, Karloff played the monster for the first three films: Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein. Uh, until he kind of grew tired of the role and wanted to moved on to other things. Now, he did return later to the Universal monster movies, playing a mad scientist in the movie House of Frankenstein. Uh, but he was replaced in the sequel following Son of Frankenstein. I believe it was called Ghost of Frankenstein, by Lon Chaney Jr. Um, and Chaney would later star as uh, Lawrence Talbot, aka the Wolfman, for Universal. Um, but he reprised that role in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and the Frankenstein monster was played by Bela Lugosi, who had originally turned down the role. Uh, After that film, an actor with a very fitting name for this kind of work took on the mantle of Frankenstein's monster. He played the role in House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and finally in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and that was actor Glenn Strange. Yeah. Uh, Now, several years later, Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks made a comedy tribute to the Frankenstein movies, and in my opinion, it's a very loving tribute, albeit it's a comedy. Um, but their film Young Frankenstein is absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious, and they filmed it in black and white, which is kind of where I got this idea to film this video in black and white. Uh, and that was definitely the right call. They even were able to get some of the original lab equipment from the 1931 Frankenstein movie. So that was really cool. Later on, a British film company called Hammer Studios uh, took on the mantle of making these classic monster movies, and they kind of took over in the 60s and 70s. And one of the ones they did was Frankenstein. Now they had a few different Frankenstein movies, mostly starring Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein. But the first one that they made was called The Curse of Frankenstein. And of course, Peter Cushing was Dr. Frankenstein, and then Christopher Lee, who was better known as Count Dracula for Hammer Studios, he played the Frankenstein monster in that one. And there have been several other adaptations and cartoons. There was and on TV there was the Munsters. Herman Munster was a Frankenstein monster. Uh, but the most faithful adaptation that I've ever seen on the big screen uh, was the film Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was released in 1994. So they did Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then they did Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The film was directed by and starred Kenneth Branagh, who's one of my favorite directors, and he played Victor Frankenstein. The film also starred Robert De Niro as the monster, uh, and the film had an all-star cast: Ian Holm, uh, Helena Bonham Carter, the, several huge and very talented stars. Uh, if you've never seen it, it's great, and Robert De Niro's performance as the creature is phenomenal. Uh, but definitely not one for kids. Yeah, just throw that out there. Not one for kids. Some other notable Frankenstein movies have included uh, Victor Frankenstein with James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe. I, Frankenstein, which was kind of along the lines of the Underworld movies, uh, but with Frankenstein and gargoyles and demons, a little weird, but yeah, it wasn't bad. It was a fun movie. Aaron Eckhart played the Frankenstein monster, and also had uh, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Bill Nye, uh, not Bill Nye the Science Guy, Bill Nye. I think that's how he says his last name. As as kind of the demon prince, uh, which you'll recognize him. He also starred in the Underworld movies, and he also played Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Now, if I mispronounced his last name and completely butchered it, I do apologize. Uh, Another really good one was Van Helsing, which was just a tribute to the Universal monster movies in general. Um, the Frankenstein monster plays a huge role in the movie, and it was a fun adventure movie. Um, there is a new one coming out this November. Guillermo del Toro has directed and made this Frankenstein movie, which is supposed to come out on Netflix. Um, and yeah, I can't wait to see it. It looks like it will be really, really good. So the story of Frankenstein has remained one of the most poignant cautionary tales in the history of literature. It has helped inspire scientists and doctors to come up with new surgical techniques to save lives, for instance, organ transfusions. That was thanks in part to Frankenstein. But no matter how advanced science gets, we must remember that the only person who has ever conquered death completely was Jesus Christ. Through him, we can have eternal life in heaven. And our bodies here, they're just rentals anyway. These will all die, but we have immortal souls, we have immortal spirits. And thank God that he gave us a way to be with him forever. Well, that's all the time we have for today. This week, I'll be going to the Big Texas Comic Con in San Antonio later in the week, so I'll be posting some more videos. I'll be posting some videos about that, about the Alamo, and I'll be posting some pictures as well, and some other historical things around San Antonio, uh, and some of my favorite places to eat while down there. I'm also going to be doing another video, probably in the next couple days, on the Mummy. So get ready for that one. That one's going to be fun. Uh, that one is actually not based off of any kind of literary source, but based off of some historical events, and definitely a fictional story, but it is one of the best of the Universal monster movies, and of course the remakes were amazing too. So anyway, that is all the time we have. So um, until next time, I hope that everyone is well. I hope you're happy, and God bless. Good night.